CRT can be delivering 10%, APY on stablecoins, we are coming out with a debit card. I have the same dream, but the goal here is to how do you get a conduit into the existing network to where I can tap to pay anywhere Visa is accepted.
Solana stablecoins are exploding in 2025, soaring to over $12 billion in on-chain supplies. However, a lot of DeFi users aren't making the most of their stabled holdings and could be leaving value on the table. Today, I'm joined by the co-founder of Solana's fastest growing yield aggregator, Carrot DeFi, to find out a bit more about how users can make the most of those assets and to see what's on the horizon for Carrot this year. JSB, GM, and welcome to SolanaFloor.
Yeah, thanks, Finn. It's glad to be on here. Love listening to your previous stuff and thrilled to be able to talk about Carrot and just the exciting space of Solana stablecoins. It's heating up.
Perfect. So for those who don't know, JSB, can you just give me a brief overview of Carrot itself? What is the protocol? How does it work? And what inspired you to build on Solana in the first place?
We like to think of Carrot as DeFi and a token. So DeFi, whether you're just approaching the space or you've been in the space a long time, can be really confusing and a mental overload of managing positions and looking, man, there's 100 options, there's so many pools and this and that, and you're slammed with signals and messaging about 80% APY here, 30% there, 15% risk-free. How can that be? And it can be really, really tiresome. And the goal of Carrot is to make DeFi easy, to make yield easy. And the way we do that is similar to how an LST works for Sol. The stake native Sol, you're getting the yield, but it's kind of bundled into that LST token. So CRT, when you deposit your stablecoins in, we mint you the CRT token at what we call the NAV rate, which is kind of think of the share price, if you will. And we take those assets and then we aggregate between a lot of different yield sources. So primarily 90% of it's made up from lending activities, which are some of the strongest, the most liquid, reliable, it's kind of the bedrock, most reliable kind of rate that's out there. We aggregate between the top protocols: Kamino, MarginFi, Mango, Drift. Well, not Mango anymore, RIP. And we do that across 3 different stablecoins, between PYUSD, USDT, and primarily USDC. We recently added more strategies into the mix. And so there's some trading strategies in there, some insurance funds, and all this kind of works together to offer really the best risk-adjusted rates on your stablecoins you can get in the form of a token that sits in your wallet. And so it's really nice you might have, let's say, $10,000, oh, this is great. But once you interact with DeFi and you open your wallet, you don't have that $10,000 anymore. Where'd it go? You have to connect to the DApp. You have to use a portfolio app. You got to do something like check on those positions. But with Carrot, it's the token price, and it's always appreciating. It's always going up as we earn that yield for you, and it becomes a useful asset in DeFi. And there's these levels of once this is possible and once this is working, just the number of things you can do with it become really, really interesting. And I know we'll dive into some of those.
Okay, perfect. And so you mentioned that it's almost all of DeFi in one token. So does that mean that you have different tax implications if you're talking about using CRT token for capital gains as opposed to income generation, or is that dependent on local jurisdictions?
Certainly, you talk to a tax advisor. I would say our primary understanding for most use cases is how capital gains are treated is more favorable than income through interest of what you're getting. And so this does make it pretty valuable, especially for our larger holders. I think care about this more is it's because it's an appreciating asset. You're only going to pay taxes on that generally when you sell it. And so it allows you to hold it long term, to move into long-term capital gains rather than short term if you're able to hold on to your dry powder long enough through Carrot, and that can be a huge advantage. Now, this isn't quite possible yet, but we have a lot of exciting developments on this front because as a token, it's an asset, just like any token is. And the ability to start taking loans against that asset really puts you in a good flywheel scenario where, okay, hey, I've got $100,000, $1 million in CRT. I don't want to sell it and incur the capital gains I might have, but I can take a loan against it, have access to my liquidity. Do I want to pay back that loan? And you've still maintained that timer, that clock, if you will, which is incredibly powerful for right type of user.
Yeah. It's really useful in the right market conditions as well. And it gives people a kind of a bit more stability and security and flexibility, which is fantastic. How does Carrot decide where to allocate funds? Is that something that you guys do it programmatically at a protocol level? Or do you have a team that's manually facilitating where funds go at what time to get maximum returns?
Yeah, let's talk about the composition of CRT. So currently we are 90% aggregating borrow lend protocols. So again, Kamino, Drift, MarginFi. And the way that those work is all programmatic. And this is kind of what we knew to be true of saying, hey, our algorithm is going to do a better job of allocating between these protocols in order to capture the best rate. Now, there's a few interesting pieces in there that we've come to see be like reality now. It really happened when we crossed about 7 billion in TVL, that our presence in the market began to really control the rate market in a positive, like a really positive way, where previously for us and like other aggregators were really operating the space, you'd really see these spikes. You'd see pretty regularly on a daily basis a move from like 3% to 30, 40, 80%, and then back down to 40 and then 70%. And it would move, between venues pretty regularly, which is really bad for borrowers in those markets, have a pretty unstable borrowing rate environment for them. But because we manage, it's a pooled asset. And so our capital efficiency allows us to move those assets efficiently between those protocols. We can do it really quickly. We can be reactive. This is a unique property of Solana that allows us to do this better, faster, cheaper, and quicker than you could do it on an EVM chain. That even on a 5, 10, 15-minute basis, we can respond to a rate spike. And our presence of responding, because of the way those rate works, we're going to reduce that rate. So if it spikes to 80 and then we move $3 million over there, that's going to come back down to their equilibrium point, which is usually around 7%, 8%, depending on the market. And similarly, that $3 million, wherever it was sitting, when we took the money out, that rate is going to go up, right? Because the utilization now has shifted. And over time, we kind of found that we compress those rates to where, frankly, if you look over the last 45 days, the rates, at least for USDC, between those markets are within a few basis points of each other. It's hover between 5.2 and 5.8. At any given time, they're really, really close, which this is a great positive thing for the ecosystem. But if our value proposition for everyone is, hey, we're going to get you a better than market rate or a better than a single venue rate by using us, that would no longer be true, right? Because you can just go get 5.6 at Kamino. Why do you need to get 5.65 from us? We have more smart contract risks. There's a lot more stuff. You should just go do that. And so we anticipated that, and as a result said, hey, how do we diversify from not just being a lending aggregator, but to be like a DeFi aggregator? And so we sought out a few more sources. The first was insurance funds. Insurance funds work kind of opposite of the market, and so when there's volatility, maybe those rates are low, it's going to provide a kind of higher average rate for us. The other is these delta neutral trading strategies, basis trades, edge JLP, and we considered building it ourselves, but we knew we couldn't be offsides. And so we partnered with some great teams with Gauntlet and Neutral Trade to help run and manage those strategies for us. And so that's where we start to get some of the edge and some of the positive EV and the needed reward for the extra risk that you're taking, to where CRT can be delivering 10%, APY on stablecoins, even though the borrow lend rate is closer to 6%. We're kind of adding those. And so within those strategy verticals, those are all automated, run by algorithms. The only part, at least currently, where we have around human impact, a configuration that we could set, is where we put caps on different venues. And that percentage, like I said, 90% borrow lend, it's about 9% in these hedged delta neutral positions, 1% insurance fund. That's allocation mix we have set. And have some parameters of how we determine hey, we're not going to put more than 10% or 12% into these things because they have a volatility effect on us. That's the only place where we have some manual control over that allocation mix. But once it's in there, fully automated, computers are faster and better at this stuff than we are.
So once the caps are set, everything just operates automatically to optimize the yield for the best possible rate, essentially.
Yeah.
And so you've mentioned a few protocols there. You mentioned Kamino, you mentioned Drift, you mentioned Neutral Trade as well. What are your processes for vetting the protocols you work with? How do you decide who's going to be safe to work with and who's not? What are the red flags there?
So one of the things we had a theory about early on was that as Carrot grew in TVL, essentially we become a liquidity provisioner, right? We're managing a lot of capital. We're deciding the venues it's going to. We figured it makes sense for new up and coming protocols to almost want to, bribe is a bad word, but in our world, a bribe system is a good one, where you can align incentives and kind of have some insurance against these things for people to say, hey, we're new. Would you allocate $200,000 to us, which could be huge for them to get off the ground. And so we have a process of how we kind of run through those. I'd say to date, no one's passed for us to add those new venues. But originally, at the very beginning, right, we had Kamino, Drift, Margin5, Mango, and Solana. And we did risk assessments on all those. A lot of the criteria of, hey, open source, certain size, have they been through some things? Have they experienced downturns? Where is the complications of their strategies. Like Drift is a little different as a trading venue with cross margin versus Kamino as a straight borrow lend, at least in the pools that we're in, though they have some cross margin stuff now, kind of helped us put all those in the mix where they kind of grayed out about the same. They all had a pretty equal footing on that risk profile. And so to start, that all works. The next phase was like our delta neutral stuff. And so we went through a pretty rigorous testing process where I would say one of our superpowers is ability to read on-chain data and put things on-chain. And so we built a pretty robust monitoring system to monitor all these trading strategies. So they're built on Drift. They use the Drift Vault system. Fun little known fact, we actually tokenized those. So that hedge JLP is actually a token. And though we don't do it now, if we wanted to, like we could sell that token by itself, which is kind of cool. And so we went through that, and we actually have a full like testing stage version of Carrot that we don't talk about or advertise. It's out there. We're the only people who own it. But we run all the strategies through there for a period of time to like test those, run through the monitoring, kind of run through scenario planning of, hey, can you like simulate this bad thing happens, we got to withdraw, or like, hey, we got to do this, and to kind of see how the system responds and test before it ever gets close, like reaching the production token. In the future, we're excited to like support new protocols in that way of saying, hey, like us putting 500 grand towards you, small little chunk for us could be huge for your protocol. But we would like scale those in, probably starting with like, okay, we're starting with 20,000 here. We did that for the other strategies too, where it's like, okay, a little bit, kind of prove yourself. We're watching our dashboards and monitoring, making sure that we're inbounds, kind of doing what we say that you're going to do, or those kind of fill out, if you will, to their max capacity.
So speaking of integrations, you've mentioned one of the benefits of the CRT token is that it is a much more flexible asset than holding stablecoins. And it is a yield-bearing stablecoin, so you have that benefit as well. But as it stands, CRT is not currently integrated into Kamino or Drift or any of these other lending markets. So what have been the biggest obstacles to getting CRT implemented there? And can we expect changes to that coming soon? Do you guys work on any extra products that might facilitate that? Are you able to elaborate there for me?
Yeah. So those teams, they are decentralized exchanges, except to their credit, like they are risk managers. Mm-hmm. And so it matters to them that they put quality assets in place. And for the most part, they have some like written standards that are out there. Really what they're looking for is you need a level of liquidity and some Oracle pricing data that's there so that they can run their liquidation engine. So, 65% loan to value ratio, they need to be able to like liquidate that asset in a responsible way to not incur bad debt, which is socialized. Like that's a bad outcome. That's what they don't want. And so it takes some time to reach the levels of kind of being in compliance or like being eligible. Thankfully, like we have great relationships with all those teams. Like we talk a lot. We're in Telegram. We're chatting about the new stuff that's going out. A unique property of CRT versus any other token is those tokens are looking for like on-chain metrics of liquidity and volume and kind of the depth of the order book, if you will, which again is really about that liquidation engine. Can we recover the assets and not incur bad debt? With CRT, like we're fully collateralized all the time and fully liquid. So one piece of the puzzle has been getting there set up to where that liquidation can go through us. Because when you go through us, like you're getting the best price, and two, we don't have any slippage because we're not on a curve. It's a redemption price, right? This is like when you go to JLP, you want to redeem JLP. It's just, okay, this is the ratio. Great. It doesn't matter the size. We can do $1 million transaction and it's not going to affect anything, which we have done several times. And it works, thankfully. I can confirm. And so we're really excited that both Kamino and Drift have committed to putting CRT on the platform. Drift is probably going to beat Kamino. Marius, if you're listening, so sorry. It seems like V2 is taking a little bit for us to get there. But those isolated markets are really kind of the key to their puzzle for them kind of putting us in there. Part of that too is actually about recursion. So you can think we're lending into those markets, and for us to like collateralize those loans starts to get into some Rumpelstiltskin. We're minting money out of thin air. We're backing loans with our own collateral. And at those venues, like that doesn't really make sense. And so these isolated markets that they're coming out with really, really help us there. And once we get we also work with the Pith team a lot and the Switchboard team a lot. You might not realize that getting the on-chain price of something is actually quite difficult, like on a contract level, for us to like publish that. And so these publishers have been really, really awesome to work with, to where we can now get reliable, verifiable, multi-publisher data sources that can verify the price of CRT. So it's not just coming from us to like, trust me, bro, which is another key piece. Like the pricing oracle is a key piece to be part of these lending markets because they need to accurately know, hey, what's this asset worth at any given time? Along with those two, so those two are awesome. That'll be huge for us from a brand visibility, and also it's like a gold star. It's kind of like, oh, this asset's here. I've seen this. I start to see it in more places. I recognize it. That's feels safer. We hope we've earned that. It's not easy. It takes time to get there. But the other thing we've been working on, really excited about, is what we call like Operation Greenhouse, which is our own version of being able to offer these loans internally. And we have some unique advantages of doing that within our kind of ecosystem. We can do these single supplier multi-borrower loans at full utilization ratios because we don't have to operate on a curve. Because again, we can just like burn that supply. Gives us this like unique relationship that, the reason you want to be able to borrow CRT, one, for the tax benefits, that's the small one really. It's really like you want to take leverage. That's the main one. Like we even saw with JLP when it came onto these markets and they could do these multiplies, TVL just like exploded because now you could, okay, I can buy CRT. I can now take an 80% loan. I can buy more CRT. I can now take more of a loan, and it allows you to like kind of lever up if you want, which is incredibly cool, incredibly like, hey, really possible because of the financial system we've got working here on chain. And so we're really, really excited about those three venues really adding to the utility list of, all right, what can I do? Like, can I be a simple holder? Yeah, totally. Can I take some leverage? Okay, now, yeah, we're getting close. You can take some leverage if you want. And hey, can I not sell and just borrow to make a trade? Yeah, you can do that. And kind of having all those venues available to you is quickly approaching.
So is it your hope that Greenhouse would kind of become the central lending and borrowing platform for CRT users? Or are you just happy to be as available as possible and users can go, if they want to go to Kamino, they can. If they want to do everything in-house on Greenhouse, they can do that. What's the strategy there?
Super happy to be ubiquitous and be everywhere. The one thing that we have that Drift and Kamino won't be able to have is uniquely, okay, so we talked about how the borrow rate or the supply rate right now for USDC is kind of around 5.5%, somewhere around there. Whereas like the overall blended rate for CRT, let's say it's closer to 9-10%, something like that. This little gap in here is actually what makes possible the looping. Because in order to loop, you have to borrow money cheaper than what you're getting from the yield-bearing asset. And when you're dealing with curve-based lending markets, you either have to like isolate those and like really the risk profile has to be so different to where it makes sense that like if we offered that ourselves, we'd have to convince somebody to lend out their money at 6% when they could just buy carrot at 10%. You're kind of like, what's the difference? Like, no, I'm going to take 10%. Thank you very much. But to CRT, the system, when we're looking at that yield aggregator piece, it's looking at yield markets that all say like 5.5%. And then Greenhouse comes along and says, hey, we're offering 6.5%. Now, to CRT, that's an economically positive decision. Like, it makes sense. It benefits everyone. We're earning more money over there. That's great. And so we're able to like make that loan at 6.5% and still be like economically positive. There's a benefit for everybody. That opens up the supply in order to take that loan where you now can earn 10% on your CRT still and have access to this cheap capital. So it's going to be possible to do the loops on Kamino and MarginFi, or not MarginFi, on Drift manually. However, I'll tell you right now, like the cost of capital in those isolated markets is more expensive. Like those are closer to 10% themselves. And so there you have no margin. You got no room there. And so we do think that Greenhouse will become the central home for like the first multiply leverage product on a stablecoin that doesn't introduce directional risk, right? We've all seen the JLP market of saying 99% plus APY, negative P&L. And you're like, what the hell, bro? I'm like, well, thanks for crypto. I love this place. Our hope is that we can, like, it's all USD based. And so like when we're showing you're getting potentially like 36% APY, you're getting 30%, APY, which is, we think, a much better experience for everybody, that you don't feel this like angst of getting screwed over of like, wait, I thought I was in the green, but like I lost money, which we're really, really excited about.
And the thing I really love about this is that even in the background of all this with lending APY and borrowing APY and all that, it's still a yield bearing asset. So you're still actually just generating the yield on CRT itself, which I think is really, really cool. So I'm going to switch gears a bit. You launched in August last year. You had about 2 million in TVL. By the end of the year, that had rocketed to about 5.5, I think, in December. And then fast forward to now, we're in mid-February, 6 weeks later, and 4x to around 20 million in TVL.
Yeah.
So I want to ask, that's exponential growth. Is that just coming from the stablecoin market on Solana exploding? Are you just a byproduct of that? Or is there a bit more at play under the hood?
It certainly helps. No doubt, right? You just got more supply. You got to find more places to put dollars. No doubt. I would say that there's been two key inflection points for us when we've really seen things ramp up. And maybe a background information there is as a new protocol, just like you're thinking about the risks that everyone's thinking about, one key factor is just like time in the market. We took some extra steps and we were double audited by two different technical teams because we knew that like we want to be a solid financial product and that like we need trust there. And so getting audited was for our peace of mind. Like we don't want to be responsible for like losing people's money, but also everyone else's peace of mind. It's like, hey, smart people have looked at this from multiple angles, and we passed with flying colors, which is great. But again, it's still gonna be time in the market, and we heard a lot of feedback from people that, hey, I feel uncomfortable being more than 4% of the supply. And so there was this element of like TVL attracts TVL. Like this is why we see a lot of snowball effects for many protocols. Is like, okay, there's 20 million there. I feel more comfortable putting my 500 grand in because I'm not 500 of 2 million. Very different story. The two inflection points though were we ran a campaign with Drip, the art platform, which I love. I'm an investor over there. Full disclosure, I love what Drip is doing. I think it is bar none the best display marketing you can buy. Awesome audience, super responsive. We saw incredible click-through rate numbers and conversion rates. And when we started, we had like 600 holders about, and we blew up all the way to like 2,100 holders. And since then, like we're still at around a little over 1,800. And so the retention there has been like really great, really positive. Now those holders were slightly incentivized. There was a raffle that went into that, kind of an offer as you do. But they were mostly like smaller holders, they're like sub 500, which is great. Like how cool it is that with your $100, you get access to the same type of strong financial product that you do with people with like multi-million dollars. It's really cool. That helped start to spread the word a bit, which was nice. But we saw the most growth after the Trump Melania kind of fiasco. At the time, it felt like doomsday. Like, did the chain halt? We're having congestion. Oh, not this again. And people were kind of panicking. And we had just hit 10 million in TVL. And pretty quickly, we handled a little over 1.5 million in withdrawals in about 2 hours.
Wow.
And the time, that's like, but fun, thanks. Okay, great. But what it showed people, and what we saw soon afterwards, is after that moment, we started doing a little over $1 million a day for the next 10, 12 days, whatever it was. It kind of have now pushed us up to 20 million or 21, whatever we're at now. And a lot of the feedback we got from some larger holders were, you've been through some stuff. The same way like we see like how Kamino and MarginFi and Drift, they've been through some events that they've had to like prove, okay, you're doing what you say you're going to do. And for them to see how we handled 1.5 million of withdrawals within 2 hours, gave them the comfort of saying, we all know when shit hits the fan, something like first out usually is okay. That's kind of some of the wisdom most people share. And because we made good on that, kind of proved ourselves, people again felt more comfortable with it. And yeah, we saw a huge jump up there. The rates were also really good then. We started doing a comparison directly. Like we kind of went after Lulo, directly, which no shade on them. I think they're a great team and stuff. But like I told you, aggregating lending markets has no positive risk reward anymore. It just doesn't. And we like double their rate. Like straight up. Like if you want a fairly similar risk profile, it's not the same risk profile. We're not going to claim it's exactly the same, but it's a very similar risk profile. You should get paid for it. And we do. And it's clearly significantly better. And we think that also probably had something to do with some shift in TVL over to Garrett.
And from the outside looking in, it looks like you guys are really starting to expand that product suite. So like you mentioned, Greenhouse, there's a lot of stuff happening behind the scenes. So my dream, something I'd really love to see, is a crypto debit card that pays real life expenses in yield-bearing stablecoins. Is that something that you guys can make happen?
Yeah, in fact, we announced it last week that we are coming out with a debit card. I have the same dream. And I think people who are not into crypto don't understand that there's non-speculative assets and benefits to crypto. And when I explain what we do and they realize, wait, what's a stablecoin? And you're just earning yield, and you're earning how much yield? Like that's nuts. The next step is like, for us right now, you have to have a wallet. And Phantom and Soulflare and Backpack and all these guys are doing a wonderful job of like making that an easier on-ramp solution. And those things are getting better day by day. But you're still having to get somebody to like download a new app. and get comfortable with it and to like learn, okay, now you swap, now you go to a DEX, now you can buy here. It's a lot to ask of somebody. And the debit card product for us represents two interests, let's say. So on one hand, it's people like you and me. Like I'm already a crypto holder and I just want an off ramp and I can like swipe that, tap it, and I'm going to earn interest on it while it's sitting there. That's phenomenal. You've given me utility, you've given me a lot of benefits, and this is great. What's fun is like from that angle, you can fund that account. So it is account. It'll feel like a banking account. You can fund it from a crypto wallet. So you can like send natively. We'll swap into USDC, and what we do is we kind of hold some of it in Carrot and some of it in USD in a bank, so it's available for the merchants to do transactions. So you're not getting like full 100% exposure rate, but you're getting still better than zero, which is in that market really what we're competing with over there, right? For the non-crypto native person who doesn't have a wallet or have assets like that, it's going to feel like onboarding to a bank where they can fund that with USD straight to their account. It's abstracted away where, again, you don't really know. You're just getting paid interest. Just like your bank pays you interest, you don't know where that interest came from. It's actually aggregated among a whole network of banks typically. We're really doing the same thing. And so being able to on-ramp, now that dollar that came into the prepaid, it's technically a prepaid debit card. It's technically the wrong term. It will feel like a prepaid debit card, but you are like funding an account. Those dollars now coming on chain. And that like increases our TVL, it increases our ability to deliver a good product, and makes that onboarding experience now incredibly easy and straightforward for somebody that'll feel like an experience they're used to. And again, our mission, let's make DeFi so easy and accessible. Like if you can buy a token, if you can fund an account, if you can use your Venmo, like you can benefit from DeFi. That doesn't have to be based on gambling or speculative assets. Like we can, bring that experience and those benefits to everybody without coming on chain, with self-custody.
And I do want to dive into that a little bit. So if we're talking about a debit card just for, the layman, for the everyman, just for someone who's never touched crypto before and wants to have a yield-bearing debit card. You've mentioned abstracting everything away. Does that mean they're not going to have access to their private keys? Does that mean they're not going to have their seed phrase? At what point is it decentralized in that sense? And what point is it still self-custody in that sense?
Yeah, at that point, it's not meant to be decentralized. It is meant to say we are almost essentially running a bank there and are dealing with your deposits. What's fun is we don't talk about this, and maybe people will care, but we're actually writing a Carrot L2. Fun sidebar. And the reason we don't make a video is it'll probably be like a private L2 because you have to handle transaction volume in a different way, and its availability has to be a lot faster. And so it's a permissioned L2. No one cares. Whatever. Maybe in the future, everyone can run their merchant accounts this way. Cool. I'm sure Sphere is already working on it. And so we're using and leveraging a lot of the blockchain tech in order to give users a peace of mind they don't even know they need. It's just our standard of how we want to build things in a decentralized way. Frankly, from a business sense, it makes sense for us. It's like it is in our best interest to do it this way. But you're right. Like you won't have keys for it. When you're transferring that, you're like funding your account, and it'll be like you have a bank account. Now, we're using a vendor to do the KYC and AML stuff, as is pretty common. Like no one's really going to do that in-house ever anyway. And so almost if you've gone through like the Fuse experience, like it'll feel fairly similar, to that. And again, we're not looking to be a wallet that we've talked about it. That's just a huge, massive undertaking. This first step is like, hey, this should feel like an account. You can log in with your email, your Google, your OAuth. Technically, you will have a non-custodial wallet address too, because I mentioned like you could transfer crypto in. So like that's there, but again, it's not your key. It's certainly like a permission deal, which again, like part of this too is people have asked this. You were like loading that card, so you're unlikely if let's say you have 100 Carrot. The intent is not that you're like transferring all this over here. If you're like dealing with on-chain, you're kind of like loading what you want. Like you're putting $1,000 here, you're topping it up, you're putting 10,000, whatever your spending limits are comfortable with. And things like that's pretty instant. Like you can do those transfers really quickly, which is nice. But the intent is not necessarily like bring people into a self-custody manner. Now, it'd be really cool once they're in there, the next jump of transferring it out to your self-custody, really, really straightforward. You're already like halfway there, which is cool. We're not looking to reinvent the wheel and keep it like super decentralized in this product suite, which is also why it's like pretty segmented away.
And I think it's important to remember as well is that, while Bitcoin maxis from 2009, I think that's really, really important. The average, normie isn't that fussed about, having their keys or whatever held in decentralized storage. So
you can have your keys, but you can't use the card.
Yeah.
Because no one wants to accept your transaction. Maybe SolanaPlay gets there, and that'll be awesome. We'll love that too. Like that's really cool too. But the goal here is to like, how do you get a conduit into the existing network to where I can tap to pay anywhere Visa is accepted? It is a caveat. Just I know we get the question a lot. It can be accepted everywhere. It's mostly in the U.S. though, because the merchant has to accept USD. So at least in the beginning, the pilots, no forex conversions. So if you're in a foreign country, or a foreign country for me, in your country, the banking system is in euros. Those won't go through. But as long as the merchant is set up to take US dollars, it'll work.
It's first steps in the right direction, which is fantastic.
Yes.
Yeah. So we mentioned before, Carrot is one of the fastest growing stablecoin protocols of 2025. Have you considered moving or expanding away from stablecoins themselves and looking at a SOL-based asset? And if you were to do that, how would you compete with such high LST yield?
The answer is yes. We actually get a lot of inbound demand from a lot of people who say, hey, can you do for my SOL what you do for my stables? And like, will you release a SOL-based version of Carrot? And frankly, as a startup founder, you're looking for PMF. And if people keep telling you, hey, can you solve this problem for me? You listen. But it's a unique product. So the similarities we want to carry from what we've learned in CRT into this type of product is, how do we maybe do this like 90-10, 80-20 mix of LST-based native yields, proxy things, combined with like trading strategies, LPs, a lot of things out there that we can like earn extra yield on these things, all wrapped into one to this 24/7 risk managed solution that we're like doing the monitoring for you. And again, it should be the highest yielding LST feeling thing. It just won't be a single validator LST. Our plan with that now is, and I love this team. They know that I love this team. I'm a huge supporter of the Sanctum and what they're doing. It's phenomenal work. I would reckon that product has some similarities to how INF works. INF works as this great facilitator of liquidity between all these tokens that are in there. But its primary goal, and they're shifting this a little bit, but their primary goal is not like rate maximization. It's liquidity depth for all the LSTs that are like Sanctum LSTs. For us, we're a little different. Like we can be more rate maximizers. Jupe Sol, high performer, H-Sol, high performer, Pico Sol, high performer. The list has some variation to it, and similar to how Meriday, when they first came out, what Meriday was offering, they still offer and do a great job of doing this. Is we've got validators who aren't doing their best for you.
Yeah.
And I don't have to worry about unstaking to move that. Totally talks a lot about how we don't have slashing because the economic decision kind of does it for itself of like, oh, you're screwing me over. Like I'm a commitment. I can like transfer my stake really easily, but who has the time?
Yeah.
And LSTs, we see LST rates advertised a lot, but for the most part, even like Kamino does this and Jupe does this. Like that's a 10 epoch arrears measurement, which is like how all APY really should work or does work, is not always indicative of future performance.
Yeah.
And so for us to have, we've got some insights. We know how to read on-chain stuff and kind of predict where rates are going to kind of get the right basket of LSTs. But again, that's not lending aggregation in the same way. And we expect that mix to be some mix of basket LSTs that we can earn maybe trade fees like INF does between those, and some trading strategies built in that are kind of delta neutral, like funding rate farmings, your LPs, your leverage LPs, probably even like some looping could like fit in there. Again, all in this wrapper of you've got active programmatic management 24/7 that is optimizing the rates, ensuring the liquidity that's backing it, and you're still getting a single token you own in your wallet that can be there.
So you've got a lot of new products on the way. Is there anything else we haven't discussed that's on the Carrot roadmap? So how would you guys evolve from a yield aggregator into a fully fledged Solana DeFi super app?
Yeah, we do. One thing we're really excited about is we can do, you can think of what we have is like cash is our inventory.
Yeah.
We've got a lot of inventory. And one problem we need to solve is how do we keep the right balance of the certain stablecoins in the mix? We're very heavy USDC right now. It's like over 90% in USDC. But it would be ideal actually to be closer to like 60%, 70% USDC, higher PYUSD, more USDT in there, and be this conduit. I know like Karina is doing this, or like aiming to do this with their Numerari product. And we kind of look at that and say, we can do that. Like we've got the same TVL and hopefully like more TVL. But our superpower, our huge advantage here is we can do Oracle-based AMM swaps on like an N plus pool, so a multi-tier, multi-leg pool for stablecoins, to where our prices are not curve-based, where we can offer more exacting prices. And when you can offer more exacting prices for those swaps, it allows you to charge a lower fee and win more often. So like the stablecoin swap wars, if you will, is all about how do you win? How do you get the hot path of these swaps? and you have to be competitive. And you can be more competitive if you have better data than everybody, where you're not
Mm.
operating on a curve, you're operating on these oracle prices, which can definitely give you a huge edge. Now, the magic part, and we see this work really well for like Linfinity does this, where they're talking about these concentrated liquidity management practices they're doing, where they only have like 1.5 million in TVL, but it looks like they have 30.
Yeah.
It looks like they have 40. We can do the same thing, but we actually have 20 million in there. We're not like faking that and like concentrating it in the way. And the reason why that matters is we can engineer that swap pool to where the available liquidity is only like very close to the strike price. But while it's not on there, on the rest of the curve, if you will, even though we don't have a curve, it's still earning yield in the lending protocols.
Yeah.
And atomically, when it's needed to fulfill a swap of a certain size, we can pull it from that lending protocol immediately, have it be available for that swap, and then put it right back in to where now we have earned a trading fee. So we've earned yield for the atomic, the moment in time that it was necessary to do that. And it continued to earn yield almost seamlessly, not exactly seamless, but almost seamlessly in those lending venues. So that gives us incredible capital efficiency that we can earn money on our money while it's also earning money for us. That we hope and see it's almost anti-competitive. It's almost like that's such an unfair advantage of no one else can do that. Anyone using a vault setup or using a sub account setup or like PDAs and stuff, like you cannot pull this off. Even the swap pools can't pull this off. The closest is actually like Meteora kind of pulls this off. So we know the theory works and it's great and is incredibly exciting because like that can be huge for the amount of yield we can get and more size, which is huge. Like there's only a certain amount of capacity in the market for lending markets at any given time. And we face the question sometimes from investors or potential investors like, what do you do if you get a billion? And we're like, that's a lot. Nobody has that. And it'd be impossible for us to like place that anywhere. But part of the answer for us is AMM, Oracle AMM stable swap setup kind of opens capacity for us. You asked about like, how do we become bigger DeFi protocol? There's a reason we decided when we launched, because Carrot is a protocol. We launched with a single token, the CRT token. And we knew that the success of the first product would really be associated to the success of the project, the protocol itself. And so we didn't want to like try to be at all thing. And we got a lot of requests for it. You know, can you make this risk profile tailored to me here? Can you do it just like this? It gives us a lot of confidence in the future to do those things because now we have a protocol that's handled over 50. It's probably like 70 million in volume now that has gone through some things and done stuff. It's been hardened. It works at these scales. We believe it can work at 2 or 3 or 4x of these scales before some other things need to start shifting around to like accommodate the 100 million mark for us. And it gives us a lot of confidence to say we can release new products, so new types of tokens. We can potentially like move into other chains, other markets. It's on the table. We'll see if we can be like the cross-chain yield aggregator. More risk there, so we're not quite ready for that. But it's on the table. It's like it's in the realm of possibilities for us to pull off within the current architecture. We're not like limited by what we've done so far, which is really really cool. And hopefully the stuff we built starts to be really useful. Like we can become a core DeFi primitive for people to be on top of rather than currently like we sit on top of the primitives, right? But now we can like build this borrow lend that we built in a unique way. We're building stablecoin Oracle based swaps in a unique way that maybe could be open source to people to use to benefit the whole ecosystem. It's really exciting momentum you get and you're like, okay, now this is possible. Now this is possible. Oh, we have this. Okay, now we can do this because this is true. Okay, that's awesome.
And I think if you ask 100 founders whether it was better to, start small and nail one product and make it perfect and then expand, 99 out of 100 would say like, yep, start small, be Jack.
Yeah. Second time founders will tell you that.
Yeah. Perfect. So feedback on the floor a little bit. Why might Carrot fail?
People stop caring. The alternatives get good and better. There was this period where we had like grown to, we were at 2 and then we were at 5. We then fell actually back down to 3 for a little while. It felt like we had a wall. And it's kind of like, we're not growing. Do people care? What are we doing right? What are we doing wrong? And we had to like look ourselves in the mirror and say, hey, don't forget about the experience. People forgot about the benefits of Carrot. It's so easy that it was hard to like tell how well you did. It was a token in your wallet, great, but we didn't like show you how well the performance was, or we didn't have the utility for it. And so I think Carrot fails when it no longer has this extra utility to it. If these products come out and flop, and there's like no reason you want to borrow, certainly like the worst case scenario of like Kamino gets hacked and we lose people's funds, that's like game over. That sucks. And, I hope we can get to a place where we can do like insurance funds, like that's on the roadmap for us to like fill some of those gaps, right? But that's certainly like a critical error that, yeah, if it happened, then yeah, you only get one chance to like build that trust, and be really, really hard to like build that back. Other than that, there's other good players in this space, right? Who have attractive products that we have found that rate isn't as competitive. Like I would tell you, like the rates are not competitive. They will continue to not be competitive. And realizing that we're not always competing on rate. And sometimes people like the idea of a DeFi savings account that doesn't sit in my wallet and it feels like my bank account. And I have to go log in to check it, and it's outside, out of mind. They kind of like that. This was like native staking for me in the very beginning. I liked it because I kind of forgot I can't spend it. Oh, I want to go buy that ape, my Degen apes, my OG family in Solana. Okay, it's staked. I can't get. Okay, great. I didn't make a bad choice. Sometimes people like that, and so there's definitely, we're catering to a certain preference. We're catering to a certain audience who sees the value in the tokenization of what we do. But it might not always be true. The vault strategy is certainly more popular. It's easier. It's kind of why people start there. But yeah, maybe people lose the appetite for it and not into the token thing.
And you talk about TVL fluctuating, going up and down, and you wonder like, are we building the right product, etc. But also TVL is very, very, it's heavily correlated to market conditions. And at the moment, people are pretty euphoric and people are willing to just throw money at basically whatever pops up. And they're not that interested in holding stablecoins at the moment compared to, maybe in a year's time, a lot of the ecosystem will be holding stablecoins, and things like Carrot and Lulo and other stablecoin platforms are going to be much more popular and hold a lot more funds.
Also, we see that, we get that feedback a lot of people like, so sorry, like I've got to trade, I've got to deploy capital. Like, yes, great, can't wait. And to be fair, what is fun, and we see this in a certain cohort of our holders, that people will go make trades and then they come back, and we can kind of see that movement, and it's kind of a blessing and curse, because as a founder with this kind of product, you want it to be really sticky, and part of the problem is like, hey, it's really easy to use. Well, let me tell you, like, really easy to use also means it's really easy to leave us. It's so easy to get in this, but it's also really easy to leave. And we don't have the friction points of you got to log in to go to your account to remember it's there, and like unstake to do it, whatever. And so it's a blessing and a curse in some ways. And those market conditions are real. And frankly, when the market gets bad, the rates are going to be bad too. Just like another piece of the puzzle we got to figure out of, hey, how do we weather a bear market and have yields that are at least better than risk-free rate? That's really our benchmark of like, it's got to be better than that. Otherwise there's no reason to take the risk of the protocols that we integrate with and stuff.
So looking ahead, what's Carrot's North Star, and how will you know if you've been successful in 2025?
Man, like TBL is certainly like just a proxy for that. Now, it's not everything, like you mentioned, like marketing conditions probably have a bigger effect on there. But if we were seeing the marketing conditions grow and we were not growing with it, it'd be concerning. For us, we're working on what our ecosystem incentive token looks like as a DeFi protocol. Like that, we want people to participate with our success. Like, we're really thankful for the people who deposited with us, and we kind of hate points programs, and I've been through that meta, been here a while, and it's not our goal to like mercenary capital or pump and dump. Like, that's not interesting to us. But like that ends up kind of being a proxy to people's expectations of success, and like, okay, great, like there's more stuff coming out here. I can see the future revenue potential of what this means. I can see the future acquisition potential of a Franklin Templeton wants to release. We didn't touch on this, but what is Carrot? It's an on-chain tokenized structured financial product builder. We just happen to do lending and yield aggregation right now. But could you do a ton of stuff? Yeah. So certainly like that kind of growth. Our North Star is man, like, are we making DeFi yield easy and simple? Are we staying true to that? It would be a mark of success if we can release that sole product and we can establish Carrot to be known for the brand of it and not just the chart of CRT of being up only. And really cement this idea of, hey, what does Carrot represent? It represents peace of mind, excellent yield, safety and security, and like a reliable vehicle. Like if we get called the risk-free rate of DeFi, that's what I want. Like I want to be in a position where if you want to run a Sharpe ratio on your trading strategies and you have to figure out what the risk-free rate that you have to beat is, it's us. Like that means we've been successful. That means we've taken out a lot of the variance, that like we represent the bedrock, just like a T-bill represents the bedrock of the US financial, or the world financial system, what the risk-free rate is. I want Carrot to be that. And I think others hope to be it. It's hard to say without being a token. Like it doesn't work unless you are. Like you have to be a transferable liquid version of that thing so that people can build other stuff off of it, knowing that you're reliable, you're a stalwart, our chart, if you go look at it, at least on the weekly and day, like it's all green. It goes up on, like we've proven ourselves, like it works, it does it. And I want to continue on that, to be known for like, okay, yeah, you want to know what Solana DeFi is? That's it. Also, we list on a centralized exchange. Man, you think about like who's the audience that can't use DeFi? Centralized exchange users. They don't have custody. And so could we give them access to DeFi through a token? That's carrot. Like that'll be a huge win for us. But I will say, hey, one key point, we're fairly intentional about not calling ourselves a stablecoin because in my head, at least, a stablecoin must be stable and not yield bearing. Some can argue that. That's fine. I disagree with them, but I don't think they're crazy. And it's why we chose the $100 price point rather than the $1 price point, is because at the $1, is it really better than USDC? No, it doesn't have as much liquidity. It's not backed by the same large institution. You know, in a lot of ways, if you want to be a stablecoin, that's a harder battle. And we've seen a lot of people come in, a lot of people fail. And so for us to be more like a money market account or a bond, or there's a few things that it can be kind of correlated to in the traditional finance sense, allows people to not put us head to head with USDC. Like we're very compatible. Use them both, but like we're the yield bearing version of that is our goal.
JSB, thank you so much for coming on. It's been a real pleasure diving into your brain and figuring out what makes Carrot grow. Looking forward to seeing everything that happens in the coming weeks.
Thank you, Finn, man. It's been a pleasure. I talk about this stuff all day. I love it. So thanks for having me on, and really enjoy getting to talk about what's to come and give some insight, hopefully, to what we do over at Carrot.
Awesome. Cheers. See you later.